Love changes the moment the self no longer needs it to survive. Not when years pass, not when experience accumulates, but when the psyche has crossed a threshold where longing is no longer a substitute for identity. This is the moment Jung would recognize as individuation beginning to seal itself, when the inner fractures have been faced rather than fled, and the hunger that once drove attachment has lost its urgency. Before this completion, love is chosen by an unfinished self. It arrives with speed, intensity, and promise because it is burdened with a task it cannot fulfill. The other is unconsciously recruited to complete what remains unresolved within. Desire becomes projection. Fantasy replaces perception. The beloved is not seen as they are, but as they are needed. Anima and animus inflate, carrying archetypal weight, turning intimacy into a symbolic rescue rather than a human encounter. Love feels urgent because it is compensatory. It must hurry because without it, the self feels exposed, fragmented, unfinished. From this position, love is loud. It insists. It overlooks contradictions. It forgives what should not be forgiven, not out of generosity, but out of fear of collapse. The unfinished self cannot afford to lose what it believes is holding it together. Attachment becomes adhesive. Separation feels annihilating. The bond is maintained not by choice, but by necessity. Then comes the breaking point, not as drama, but as erosion. Loss enters quietly. Disillusionment follows, not as cruelty, but as inevitability. The projection cracks under reality's pressure. The beloved fails to save, complete, or redeem. What collapses is not only the relationship, but the illusion that love could substitute for selfhood. This is where the psyche turns inward, not heroically, but reluctantly. Shadow material surfaces. Dependency is recognized. The self is forced to encounter its own unfinishedness without the buffer of fantasy. This confrontation is the threshold you cannot unknow. Once crossed, love can no longer be innocent. Once crossed, you see how much of what was called love was hunger wearing devotion's mask. Memory becomes heavier here. Past bonds do not disappear. They settle into the psyche as evidence. Loss becomes a silent witness, present in every future attachment. When the self finishes, when it integrates what it once outsourced, love loses its urgency. Not because desire dies, but because it is no longer desperate. A finished self does not rush toward intimacy. It measures it. It does not confuse intensity with truth. It no longer projects salvation onto another because it has already retrieved it from within. And once you reach this point, you begin to understand something unsettling. Love does not become lighter after completion. It becomes deliberate. It becomes costly. And it becomes impossible to enter unconsciously. After individuation has taken root, love no longer arrives as a solution. It appears as a question. The finished self does not move toward another out of absence, but out of discernment. This is where love becomes slower, not cautious in the sense of fear, but restrained by clarity. Nothing is missing, so nothing must be filled. And because nothing is needed, everything is weighed. Here, the anima or animus no longer dominates the encounter. Projection has lost its power. The other is no longer elevated into an inner figure meant to carry unlived potentials. They are perceived as a separate psyche, burdened with their own shadow, history, and limitations. This is precisely why intimacy becomes heavier. Fantasy once softened perception. Completion removes that veil. What remains is realism, and realism has weight. The finished self recognizes immediately what it can tolerate and what it cannot. Illusion is no longer charming, it is invasive. Emotional inconsistency is no longer romantic, it is destabilizing. This is why love chosen from completion is less forgiving, not because the heart has hardened, but because the psyche has learned the cost of self-betrayal. Boundaries emerge not as defenses, but as facts. From this position, love does not escalate quickly. It unfolds under observation. Desire is present, but it is not allowed to govern. The finished self does not confuse attraction with compatibility, nor intensity with meaning. Each gesture is felt, but not exaggerated. Each bond is allowed, but not fused. Detachment and desire coexist here, not as contradiction, but as consequence. One can want deeply without clinging. One can attach without dissolving. This is also where memory becomes an unspoken participant. Past losses are not healed away, they are integrated. They inform perception quietly. The finished self knows how bonds end, not theoretically, but somatically. This knowledge does not create cynicism, it creates gravity. Love is no longer a promise of rescue, but a voluntary exposure to risk, and risk, when nothing is needed, feels sharper. In contrast to the unfinished self, which loved to escape itself, the finished self loves while remaining intact. It can stay without losing shape. It can leave without fragmentation. This is not emotional coldness, it is self-possession. Emotion is felt fully, but it is not allowed to destabilize the inner structure that was so painfully built. Once this threshold is crossed, love cannot be romanticized without self-deception. It is no longer imagined as destiny, healing, or completion. It is recognized as a conscious participation between two separate, finished worlds, each capable of standing alone, and therefore capable of choosing.
Love chosen by a finished self carries a tension that unfinished love never knew. It is quieter, yet internally denser. Where earlier bonds sought fusion, this one tolerates distance. Where earlier desire demanded reassurance, this one accepts uncertainty. The psyche that has integrated its shadow no longer confuses emotional volatility with depth. It has seen what unexamined need does to intimacy, and it refuses to repeat it. This refusal is often misread. From the outside, the finished self can appear distant, selective, even withholding. In truth, what has disappeared is not feeling, but compulsion. There is no longer an unconscious urgency to be chosen, to be mirrored, to be validated. Love no longer functions as proof of worth. It becomes an encounter between two realities, not a merger designed to erase loneliness. For the listener who has crossed this psychological line, something irreversible has occurred. You no longer believe in love as an answer. You notice how quickly others confuse intensity with connection. You see how often devotion is rooted in fear of abandonment rather than genuine recognition. And once seen, this pattern cannot be unseen. You may still feel desire, but you feel it without illusion. You recognize when attraction is asking for sacrifice of self, and you step back. This is where intimacy becomes riskier, not safer. When nothing is needed, every bond is optional, and what is optional must justify itself. The finished self knows it can survive separation. This knowledge removes the unconscious glue that once held relationships together. Love must now stand on truth alone. There is no psychological subsidy, no fantasy fills the gaps, no hope overrides incompatibility. Memory and loss shape this stance silently. Each previous ending has taught the psyche what it costs to ignore reality, not in abstract terms, but in lived consequence.
This accumulated knowledge makes love slower because it has become deliberate. It makes love emotionally heavier because the self is fully present. There is no dissociation into fantasy. Every attachment is felt with awareness of impermanence. Yet desire does not vanish, it becomes more precise. The finished self can want without needing. It can attach without surrendering sovereignty. It can open without collapsing inward. This balance is not learned through instruction, it is paid for through disillusionment. In contrast, unfinished love was loud because it was fragile. It needed constant reinforcement. It depended on reassurance to survive. Finished love does not demand maintenance through intensity. It either aligns or it does not. And when it does not, the psyche disengages without drama, without hatred, without the illusion that something essential has been lost. This is the psychological consequence of completion. Love remains possible, but it is no longer necessary.
What remains after this completion is not indifference, but a colder clarity. Love, now stripped of its former urgency, no longer rushes to justify itself. It waits. It observes. It allows time to expose what fantasy once concealed. The finished self understands that intimacy does not deepen through intensity, but through sustained truth, and truth requires patience. This is where love becomes emotionally expensive. Without projection, there is no protective illusion to soften disappointment. Without need, there is no internal pressure to rationalize misalignment. Every flaw in the other is registered accurately. Every inconsistency is noted, not with judgment, but with precision. The finished self does not hope someone will become different. It recognizes who they already are. This recognition creates a paradox. Love is calmer, yet the stakes are higher. When nothing is needed, every choice is fully owned. There is no unconscious dependency to distribute responsibility. If the finished self stays, it stays knowingly. If it leaves, it does so without self-deception. This is why later love is less forgiving, not because compassion has diminished, but because self-knowledge has sharpened consequence. To remain in what violates the integrated psyche would require fragmentation all over again, and that price has already been paid once. Shadow integration is decisive here. The finished self no longer expects another to carry its darkness, soothe its wounds, or redeem its past, nor does it volunteer to carry theirs. Mutual recognition replaces mutual rescue, and this, more than anything, makes intimacy fragile. Two whole psyches have fewer illusions to cushion conflict. There is no fantasy of completion to keep them bound through contradiction. For the one listening who recognizes this terrain, there is a quiet grief embedded within it, not nostalgia for past lovers, but for the version of love that once felt infinite. That love required blindness. This one does not allow it. Desire still exists, but it no longer overrules discernment. Attachment still forms, but it never overtakes self-possession. Detachment is not absence of feeling, it is the presence of choice. Memory stands nearby in every later bond, not intrusively, but as gravity. The finished self remembers what collapse feels like. It remembers how easily the psyche dissolves when it hands its center to another. This memory does not create fear, it creates limits. Love is allowed only where those limits are respected. This is the final transformation. Love without need, desire without fantasy, intimacy without projection. A finished self does not look for love, it decides whether it is worth allowing. If this narration unsettled something you recognize, do not ignore it. Engage with the work, like the video so it reaches others who are ready to see. Comment with what changed in your perception once illusion fell away. Subscribe if you want more truths that are not designed to comfort but to clarify.